A very warm welcome. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Laurent Dedenis, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chainstack. And I'd like to thank you for joining us for this session of webinar series that we put together for the last month and a half that is basically targeted at helping developers and partners within the R3 Corda community to understand what Chainstack built. We are thrilled to be working with this fast changing and actually fast growing ecosystem. And the more we have actually learned and understand about the Corda community, and the more we are positively surprised by how far developer partners and consortiums have built and delivered on Corda vision. We actually learned a lot in the past year working with Corda and R3 team, and we're going to show you what we've built and launched at CordaCon in London a month and a half ago. But we're also going to show you what we have started to build and complement around Corda Enterprise. So we'll talk about Corda Network, but we'll also talk about Corda Enterprise today. Our webinar is a small group of people this morning in Singapore. So please feel free to interact with us using the chat feature or simply raising your hand and feel free to ask questions. So one quick word about Chainstack. Chainstack is a cloud and blockchain agnostic platform as a service. And we basically provide tools and services for developers to build, deploy, manage, and orchestrate nodes and network for decentralized application. We are headquartered in Singapore, and we have started working together with our team about 2.5 years ago, building what we believe is the easiest and most complete platform as a service deploying blockchain for the enterprise. Today, we actually deploy multiple protocols into multiple clouds. We support multi-chain, Quorum, Corda, and soon Fabric. And on the public chain, we support Ethereum and Bitcoin. And we help enterprise and partners to deploy in hybrid cloud configuration, both in public cloud like Google or AWS, but also in private cloud and on-premise. But enough with the introduction. Let me just kickstart the webinar by playing a very short animation explaining what Chainstack is before Jona actually takes over and walk you through the platform.
Like cloud computing, blockchain has now become a disruptive standard in the enterprise world. Many businesses are embarking on blockchain projects, only to discover that working with blockchains requires deep expertise and a new mindset. Deploying blockchain protocols, understanding consensus, growing and managing a consortium, auditing transactions, ensuring security, it's just plain hard. What you need is a reliable, secure, simple way to start leveraging the power of blockchain in minutes, not days or weeks. And you want it available in one, unified, easy-to-manage platform. You want Chainstack, an enterprise-grade blockchain platform as a service. Chainstack helps you build, deploy, and manage networks, on cloud or on-prem, and on a variety of protocols, because enterprises have unique requirements. And when it comes to blockchain protocols, there's simply no one-size-fits-all. Chainstack combines powerful wizards on its front end and complex orchestration at the back end, so you can easily bring up, configure, provision, and manage your networks in a few clicks. Create permission networks on Fabric, Corda, Multichain, Quorum, and more to come. Or launch a node on a public chain such as Ethereum. And that's not all. Form and scale consortiums without any special configuration or long-winded policy, all the while ensuring security, from the infrastructure and website layers to on-chain and off-chain. Simply put, with Chainstack, you can take your blockchain projects to market faster, be several times more productive, and leverage network effects. Chainstack, designed to help you get the most value out of blockchain in the simplest way possible.
Okay, so thank you, Laurent, for the intro. As mentioned, I'm going to do a quick demo to go through the platform and show you what we've built with Corda. So at the moment, we launched our first offering with Corda in CordaCon just last month. And this first iteration allows you to very easily and very quickly deploy a private compatibility zone, so essentially a private Corda network in just a few clicks to your deployment option of choice. So whether that needs to be in cloud or a hybrid deployment on-prem. And users can come in and join that consortium with multiple members. We can deploy new nodes into that network as well across different cloud providers. So we're not limiting ourselves to just one infrastructure provider. And then, of course, we can also deploy Corda apps, which actually enables us to make use of this network and interact with each other. So I will jump straight into that demo now. Here we go. So this is the Chainstack console landing page. As you see, I have a few projects set up already in front of me here. They're a mixture of consortium and public chain projects. So as Laurent mentioned, we support both Bitcoin and Ethereum, so you can join either of those nodes onto the mainnets and testnets. But we also support several different protocols for consortium blockchains, such as Quorum, multi-chain, and now Corda. So to take a look at Corda, we'll jump into this consortium that I've set up earlier here. And just before we start, I'd like to highlight the members feature in Chainstack. And essentially what this allows us to do is to just very quickly and by email invite other members to participate in this project with us. And what that means is once they accept that invitation, that organization is able to set up accounts in Chainstack themselves, and they can start deploying infrastructure in here. So whether that be a new network or a node within an existing network in this project. And in this way, we can have shared infrastructure amongst different organizations who own their own account and pay for their infrastructure on their own, but all operate within the same network and same environment with each other. So in this example, we have just 2 members in this project who will be able to operate with each other and transact amongst each other. So here's a network I created earlier, which is a Corda network with 2 nodes, as you can see. But before we take a look at that one, let me just show you the process of creating a network. So we'll create some network here, some systems network. And of course, we will select Corda as our protocol. As you see here, we will, across our different protocols, we provide the option to choose which consensus algorithm you'd like to use. At the moment, we just support a single notary for Corda, but we're looking to support notary clusters soon based off of either Raft or BFT Smart consensus amongst them. But for now, it's still sort of an experimental feature in Corda, so it's not something that we are supporting at the moment. So you can still build a network with a single notary and scale that up to multiple notaries if you need, but they just won't be operating in a notary pool amongst each other. So from this point, we can now define how we will deploy the initial nodes in the network, whether that be cloud or in hybrid environment. In this case, we'll be selecting cloud, and we will deploy this network initially in GCP. And we're in Singapore today, rainy Singapore actually, and so we'll put this in the APAC region. As you can see here, this will deploy a network map service, a non-validating notary, and 1 participant node and a doorman as well, actually, all in this environment. So here's a summary of what we're about to create, and we can go ahead and do that now. So there's a lot of complex orchestration happening in the background as we spin up this network and register the initial node with the doorman and on the NMS. And get all the relevant certificates and keys and whatnot required for those nodes to participate with each other. So that should take about 3 or 5 minutes or so. And while we're waiting, we can jump into this one that I've created already. So, excuse me. This ticket net is an example based off of a tutorial that we have in our documentation site, which shows how, just sort of a fun example of a Corda app which prevents ticket scalping by putting the tickets distribution as transactions on the ledger in this network. And as you can see, I have 2 nodes or 2 organizations that are participating here. One is this Antarctic record distributor, and this other one is Ticket Monster, who will receive these tickets and then distribute them to their own customers or sell them to their customers. So if we take a look at this node here that I own, it's run by my organization, as you can see here. This is the one that I'm logged in as. We have the legal name of this node and some RPC credentials for us to be able to connect and interact with it. And if we take a look at the other node in the network that is owned by this other member that I showed earlier, we just are able to see their legal name that we can, the only piece of information that we need in order to be able to transact or do anything with this organization. We can come in and add a new node into this network. For example, let's say we're setting up a new distribution option in a different part of the world, and maybe we can deploy this one in a different location or a different cloud server. So as you can see here, this network is running in GCP and AWS with nodes in different locations and configured to the way that makes most sense for the operators who are within it, the node operators within it. But of course, this node is kind of useless to us unless we can install some Corda apps, some applications on here for us to actually be able to transact and run flows with the other nodes in the network. So that's why we've built this, this special interface here specifically for Corda networks on Chainstack for users to be able to come and manage and install their chain code. So their Corda apps, sorry. So as you can see, I have two Corda apps already installed here that I did earlier, but I can easily add a new one as well. So for example, here I can maybe add the Corda Finance app. And we'll unpack the manifest of this Corda app and do a few validation checks to ensure that it is, the file looks like a Corda app. We're not installing anything strange on here. And then if we choose to install it, this node will then be restarted as we put the Corda app on the file system of the node and reboot it to install correctly. But I won't do that now because I'd like to show an example of this NoScalped app that we've installed earlier. And we can jump into the screen here where I can connect to my node and initiate some flows. So let's quickly find that node again. Our network is still pending there, and our new node that we created is also pending. Okay, so we'll use the Chainstack standalone shell, which is just a Dockerized version of the Corda standalone shell to perform our operations here. So I think this is the correct node that I did earlier. Yeah, we'll add the host and the username and password required to connect to this node, and we'll just run this. All right, there we are. So we're in the node. We can check the node info here to make sure it's all correct. Yep. And what we want to do is, let's see, list out the flows that are installed. And as you can see, the NoScalped flow that I showed earlier is installed already. And what we can do now is initiate this flow for, let's say, an event that we're going to distribute some tickets for. This one will be the Chainstack concert. We'll distribute 500 tickets, and the distributor that we are going to give these tickets to should be Ticketmonster, which in this case is this node right here. So we'll start that flow. And there you can see we've created the transaction. We're sending it around to the relevant participants and getting it verified and signed, getting it notarized as well by the notary that's on this network. And that should finalize soon. There we go. And we can check our vault as well and see that it is in fact there. Yes, great. All right, so that is that in a nutshell. You can see how straightforward and quick it is for us to set up a new network and to set up nodes and infrastructure within that network, and then to install chain code and actually perform operations on it. And in terms of what's next for us, this is just our first initial step into Corda, but we're looking at some news will be coming soon regarding supporting Corda Enterprise, as these nodes are all running open source at the moment, and also the ability to join nodes onto public networks such as the Corda network, as this is something that we've heard a lot from our customers, that this is where the business networks will be operating, where people will be installing these Corda apps and actually running real-world, real-life transactions there in a much larger network with many more node operators within it. So yeah, a lot of interesting news coming there in the next few months from us. So stay tuned. And in the meantime, I suggest you go and sign up to Chainstack. You can get a free account and start playing around with this interface right away, and actually developing and testing any Corda apps that you may have, or any environments or situations that you may want to be able to test and run some examples with. So that's that, and I will now hand over to Zaid, who will talk to you a little bit more about the case for Corda and give you some examples of what that might look like in a real-world environment.
Hi everyone. I'd like to just take a step back and talk to you about a little history about Corda, and one of the I'll explain from a conceptual perspective how you'd implement a use case and how members of a consortium can benefit from it, from using Corda. So Corda was initially developed by R3 in the financial services industry. However, from capital markets and trade finance use cases, you'll see that it's now being applied in multiple industries by various companies. You'll see there's a graphic here, but I'll talk to you about the R3 marketplace in a few minutes, where you can actually go look it up and see various solutions being implemented in various industries by all of these members yourself. For each of these consortiums, so in these various industry use cases, a number of consortiums have already been formed. You may have heard of it in news of Marco Polo, Monetago, Tradle, etc., when many known large institutions or like Fortune 500 companies have come together and are working on various use cases in these industries using the Corda protocol. With Corda, only parties involved in a specific transaction within this consortium knows exactly what's going on, whereas other members in the consortium don't have any knowledge or sight. They don't even know that a specific transaction has taken place if they are not party to that transaction, which I'll elaborate in a few moments. So here's an example of a use case of an order-to-cash Corda app that you would install on a new permission network that you set up on Corda. So on Chainstack, when you set up a Corda network, we deploy it with a NMS, a network map service, which runs Corda daemon. This daemon, what it does is it issues a certificate to all the members of this consortium that allows them to join this network and do transactions on this network. And we also issue a non-validating notary node. This non-validating notary node ensures that there's no double spend or duplicate transactions that take place on the network. So here we've got an order-to-cash Corda app installed on this network, where a number of third-party service companies can do services for a number of transport and logistics companies. Once the service is complete, the service company will issue an invoice to the transport and logistics company. But before this invoice is paid off, another service company will come in and inspect the service done by the other service company to ensure that everything was completed 100%. This is an example of a very complex workflow running between multiple companies within the same consortium, where there's a number of dependencies before invoice can be paid out. I'll elaborate on it a little further on the next slide. So we have 3 members within this consortium that are transacting with each other. Pacific Technical Services performs a service where they record the service in their books. They apply credit to an account, generate an invoice, and send this invoice to enterprise carriers, who is their customer. Enterprise carriers then validate this invoice by first recording it into their books and doing a lot of acknowledgement before they pay it out. Wherever you see these sort of red blocks, that's an example where there's some sort of friction within this process, where for every action that one party does, another party needs to recapture it and validate it before a decision can be made. Another activity that takes place in this example is, once the service is completed by the one party, independent inspectors, another party comes in, and they actually need to ensure that the service was completed 100% or not. So they generate a report and send this off to their customer, who pays the invoice if the service was completed 100%. So if we had to do this on Corda, everything on one network, just these three parties within this transaction would have shared threat, shared business knowledge, shared data, all running on the same shared network. And once you have all of this in place, wherever you see these red blocks, where I said there's some friction in this process, you can now eliminate this. And you can do transactions much more quicker, much more reliably, and with much more trust. So in this example, we have three main activities here: the service activity, inspection activity, and the invoice payment activity, running on this Corda app, or this order to cash Corda app. I'm going to just go a little more into detail in terms of the components of a Corda app. There's two primary ones I'd like to highlight here. Within a Corda app, you have something called a flow and something called a state in Corda. A flow is like a workflow. Except with Corda, it's a shared workflow between members, and a state is that shared fact of knowledge that you'd store in your database, or what Corda calls a vault. So in this example, I'm just going to quickly go down into this inspection flow. When enterprise carriers begins their transaction, they assign this independent inspectors. So they'll call this a shared workflow called the inspection flow, and change the state to an assigned state where you'll see that independent inspectors is assigned to it. Pacific Technical Services then completes the work, and then they advise independent inspectors that, we are now ready for inspection. So the inspection state, which all members of this transaction on the consortium can see, is scheduled. And then once independent inspectors does the inspection, they'll update this inspection flow, and the inspection state changes to either accepted or rejected. So all three members of this transaction know at any point in time that what is the actual state of the transaction. So this was just a quick example of how flows and states work within this Corda app. So what Corda gives you is complete privacy. So only transaction details are stored on nodes of the transacting parties. So, I had like maybe 10 members of this consortium, but only these three parties knows that a transaction even took place in the first place, because this transaction is recorded on their vaults only. This is unlike other sort of blockchain protocols like Ethereum and Quorum multi-chain, which are available on Chainstack, where every member in the consortium via this gossip protocol knows that a transaction took place, but they may or may not be able to view the contents of the transaction if encryption was used or not. You have shared application logic, and where everybody is using the latest version of an agreement. You have immutability, like any blockchain protocol, where no transaction can be amended, at a later point in time. Whatever was recorded on the shared vaults or the databases can never be changed. You have known identities so that doorman issues a certificate to the specific members of this permission network, and no member of the public can access this network and transact on it unless they have a certificate. It's enterprise developer friendly, so you're programming your core apps using like Kotlin Java, which targets Java and JavaScript developers. We offer the community edition, but you can also speak to us if you're interested in using the enterprise version of Corda. And you have this very sophisticated flow framework that allows you to do complex workflows between multiple members within the consortium. So as I mentioned earlier on, you can go and have a look at the R3 marketplace, where you'll see solutions from various companies and who are using Corda. And you can also look at the marketplace directory, which lists a number of Corda partners and what their offerings are. So how do you get started with Corda today on Chainstack? So first, within your organization or your value chain, so in your industry, between you and perhaps your supplier, your customer, or even competitors, look for a process where there is some need for reconciliation, where one party has to send data that needs to be verified by another party. Look for where there's friction that could be eliminated, or where there's potentially disputes between parties to what is the latest version of a transaction. Then set up a Corda network across all the parties in this consortium in minutes on Chainstack, as Jona demonstrated. So do this by signing up to one of our subscription plans. Deploy a private permission Corda network, invite other members from other companies to join this network. So on Chainstack, you just quickly send an email from our console to any party you'd like to join the network, and they'll be able to deploy their node on this Corda network. And then deploy a Corda app that allows each party to execute these complex flows to reach agreement on transactions before you record it to the ledger. So Ashlie, will this conclude here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Zaid. So for anyone that's interested to learn a little bit more about our Corda implementation, these are the following resources that you can access to learn more. So firstly, if you'd like to sign up and try the service out and deploy your own Corda network, you can go to console.chainstack.com. If you'd like to access our technical tutorials and other resources, we have a doc site, so that's docs.chainstack.com. And for any technical FAQs, you can go to support.chainstack.com. For all the information, you can go to our website, chainstack.com. So if you go to the next slide, immediately after this webinar, we will be sending you a full recording that you will be able to watch at your own time. But just to let you guys know that if you have any questions, please feel free to drop us an email. We have all emails listed on this slide. And yeah, again, if you have any other questions that you'd like to take this discussion further, we'd be more than happy to do so. So before I close this webinar, I'd like to open the floor to questions if you guys have anything that you want to find out more on.
All right, guys. It looks like we have no question this morning. Anyone? Okay, very good. Jona, Zaid, Ashlie, thank you very much. Everyone on the call, thank you very much for joining us this morning or this evening, your time. Please feel free to reach out to us, as Ashlie mentioned. We'll be happy to help you and understand how we can actually support your implementation of Corda. Thank you very much, and I wish everyone a good day and a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.